Our marriage got better when you became more emotionally intelligent.
Yep. I will say, all pride aside, when we got married, my emotional intelligence was that of a toddler. Like, I got arrested multiple times when I was a teenager, and luckily, got off a couple felony charges. And I think a lot of that was like a lashing out. I think my emotions were just leaking out everywhere, and I didn't know how to process them.
You have a heart for me,
Yeah,
but there
100%.
would be a lot of times in conflict where I wouldn't feel the heart. And sometimes anger has a way of being a shield to someone and making them feel cold. So it would make me feel not as safe sometimes because I'd maybe be upset about something and I wouldn't feel his empathy.
Right.
So we had to get granular where I'm like, babe, this is what empathy looks like. Sometimes we want something from our partners or we want them to grow in an area, but we're not giving them the tools.
I literally was not shown the value of emotion. Our first year of marriage, he was like, yeah, you need therapy. I was like, absolutely not. No, I do not. What's going on, everybody? We are back with another episode of Mornings with My Muse. And I got my muse to the left of me, Avrielle.
Hello.
And I'm Elijah. Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of emotional intelligence. This is something that my wife was born with. And I think,
Wow, that's generous.
I'm throwing out some stereotypes here from the jump. But maybe women might be hardwired a little bit more that way, or maybe it's nurture.
Yeah, maybe
But
it is
we'll
nurture.
talk about it, if it's nature or if it's nurture. But we're going to talk about the importance of emotional intelligence. We're going to talk about some stories about how the lack of it can cause stress, drama, conflict, unhealthy conflict. And we're going to talk about the journey of redemption. We're going to talk about growing in emotional intelligence and how it can benefit every area of your life. Anywhere where people exist in your life, emotional intelligence will be beneficial to you.
Yeah. Our marriage got better when you became more emotionally intelligent.
Yep. I will say, all pride aside, when we got married, my emotional intelligence was that of a toddler. I feel like it was pretty bad.
No, it's funny that we're laughing about it now.
Yeah, it was. Whew.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was a crazy time.
But God. I think I grew up in a house, loving house. It's crazy because I never didn't feel loved. I think my parents did a good job of that. But growing up and becoming an aware individual of just kind of what the benchmarks are in relationships and things like that, I realized, man, I did not learn what I needed to learn when it came to the emotional awareness and intelligence piece. And when I look back at my past relationships, dating, I'm sorry. Put some folks through it. And large part because I was just emotionally unaware. And I think also on top of that, I think in my teenage years, there was a lot going on in my home. And so I think because there was a lot of extreme circumstances and situations going on, when you have lots of big emotions flaring or, going around and you don't know how to process through them, that can cause a young teenage boy to just be off his rockers and just be running around wild. And, I haven't really shared all of my story, but I got arrested multiple times when I was a teenager and luckily got off a couple felony charges. And I think a lot of that was a lashing out. I think my emotions were just leaking out everywhere and I didn't know how to process them. And so I was just going around doing everything that I thought would bring joy, contentment, happiness, when it was really something that needed to be looked at internally. And I think that's actually something good that we can talk about is how we can a lot of times try to find external solutions for internal problems.
That's good.
I think you're a very extremely emotional, intelligent woman.
Oh, thanks, babe.
Yeah. Your friendships are so healthy. You know how to handle conflict well. You know how to communicate your emotions well, pinpoint them. And where did that come from?
I would say relationships. Growing up, I had always wanted a sister, okay? So I had 6 brothers and I was the only girl and I always hoped for a sister and obviously that didn't happen. So I looked for that sister bond in my friendships and I always wanted that quintessential best friend relationship that you would see in movies. I would desire it so badly. And for literally all my life, I had really close girlfriend relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're in close girlfriend relationships, it forces you to deal with stuff. Honestly, I think being in relationship with women really helped me in that area, honestly, because I can't really remember me having deep emotional conversations with my parents or even with my siblings. I remember us me having that more so with my friends. And I think growing up with women in my life that were really that close, and then if I upset them or they upset me, we could have those kinds of conversations. We were in high school and we were in elementary, so I can't say that we did it perfectly. We didn't.
Yeah.
There was a lot of learning and growing in that, but I think that having that at an early age was really helpful for me, so that by the time I got to my adulthood, I could navigate most conflict because I was dealing with it all the time. And I think that especially when you're maturing and growing and you're dealing with that at such an early age, maybe a lot of times incorrectly, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
I think I learned a lot as a result of those relationships. I would say that's where it came from.
Okay.
And I was also I always had a boyfriend. That's another thing.
There you go.
I stayed in a relationship. And I was always the unhealthy one, actually. That's actually funny. So
even though you were emotionally intelligent.
No, I'm saying I wasn't. I was learning that in those early ages. So you're asking me where where that came from. I'm saying it came from those relationships. And I think being in a lot of relationships growing up, I always had a boyfriend. I was a serial dater. I think me being the unhealthy one a lot of the time, I always cheated. I was just like, I would go with every impulse, and I was always just driven by like adrenaline and rush. Okay. So that was very unhealthy in my relationships. And yeah, I think just having that and like learning through, unfortunately, like negative situations, I think is where it came from, to answer your question.
So something that you mentioned is conflict taught you how to be emotionally aware. Do you think that is something that is required for people to learn emotional intelligence, or can we internally learn how to pinpoint our emotions, put words to them, be able to communicate them? Is that something that you feel like can happen, or is conflict the best way to learn how you really feel?
That's such a good question. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed because I think that you need to put things into practice. Like you can diagnose your emotions and your feelings all you want, but when another person comes into the picture and you're having to navigate those emotions with somebody else who has their own set of feelings and emotions, how else are you going to learn how to navigate that well if not being put in conflict? Like I think conflict is such a beautiful opportunity for two people to connect more and two people to just really see another side of each other, grow in vulnerability and intimacy. So I'm like, how can you navigate emotional intelligence without another person? Do I think you can read and get a lot of tools? Yes. Do I think that you could learn, verbiage for your emotions? Absolutely. But I do think it needs to be put into practice with another human being.
Something that we're super intentional about, especially like me coming from a household that I feel like wasn't super emotionally intelligent, is making sure our kids, my son especially, is able to pinpoint what he's feeling in the moment, put words to it. We have like the feelings wheel. I don't know if anybody else knows what the feelings wheel is. Well, there's like two of them in our house, one downstairs, one upstairs. We'll pull that joint out and we will walk through it. And then we will take time to make sure that they can communicate how they're feeling in the moment. And that's not always through conflict. Sometimes that's just through conversation. But
that's true.
I think the times where we do really sit down and like have to figure out the more nuanced emotions is when it's like, oh, we had this situation that came up and it wasn't just happy, sad, nervous, scared, something like that. So it's something deeper.
That's so true, because I feel like with Shiloh, he's really good at like saying I'm sad or I'm mad or, expressing himself. And I really love that. And I'm really proud of us for how we've stewarded that. I also realized that the ways that those situations have come up has been through moments of tension with him. Not that we're in conflict with him, but maybe like we notice he's sad about something and we're asking him, what are you sad about? And even now to this day, sometimes he still has trouble expressing it because he needs the language for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just such a big piece of emotional intelligence, because I remember I think I'm emotionally intelligent, but I remember a few years ago when I started therapy, and my therapist asked me, she was like, okay, well, how are you feeling? And I kept saying, I think. And I was fleshing out how I feel through my thoughts. And she was like, you still haven't told me any feeling words yet. And I remember that was so pivotal for me because I was like, wait, there's still another level that I need to grow in terms of emotional intelligence because I'm not fully able to pinpoint my emotions and actually put a name to them.
Right.
You know? So I think that was really helpful because you absolutely need to even expand your vocabulary, I think, for emotional intelligence so that verbiage you can like huge. Put verbiage for it, you know, and then adequately express that to somebody else so that they can deal with it, you know?
Yeah.
What would you say was the turning point for you in terms of like, okay, you recognize that this was an issue for you. How did the change come about? What was, like you say, the light switch?
Honestly, it was you. There's no questions about it. In year one, our first year of marriage, you was like, yeah, you need therapy. I was like, absolutely not. No, I do not. What? I'm black. We don't do that.
Yeah, that was crazy.
It's crazy because like my parents did like marriage counseling. They did premarital counseling. They did marriage counseling growing up. And I was still just very against therapy in general, like the idea of therapy. And I think there's definitely like negative beliefs surrounding therapy in the black community specifically. It's
what
like,
happens in this house stays in this house.
That, and it's like, I think growing up, I just always saw therapy as something really clinical. So like you only go to therapy if you're diagnosed with something. You're a schizophrenic or you're bipolar. Like those are the people who need therapy, not regular folks. I'm good. I'm healthy, right? And it's like, yeah, you're physically healthy, but you're not emotionally healthy. And so I think, just through us, conflict, button heads, not seeing eye to eye, going through a lot, and you reiterating over and over, hey, babe, I think you need therapy. Hey, saying the same thing, it's just repetitions. Eventually, I was like, you know what? Actually, I didn't even eventually say, you know what? I was against it until I think that was like, our third year being married. So, hey, I said absolutely not for 3 years. And then you decided one day, I'll get therapy for me. And then you do you, right? And so she found a therapist. And I remember we were living in Atlanta at the time. You had a discovery call or something, like your first call, your onboarding call with her. And I don't know what happened in the flow of the conversation, but I was in another room reading or doing something. I think you came out and told me, you were like, hey, babe, the therapist wants to talk to you. I was like, I didn't sign up. I didn't fill out the form. She only got the deposit for you. Like,
I don't remember this, really?
Yeah.
Okay,
I remember.
so what happened?
Somehow I went on the call, talked to her briefly. I just felt like God placed the right person, I will say also, in our life.
She's great.
As a therapist, because for some reason, I felt really comfortable talking with our therapist. And because we were having pretty consistent conflict, I wasn't handling conflict well at that time. I definitely saw that there was a need and there was room for growth. Like I needed to do something better. I needed to learn something better. Because the way I was handling conflict was just what I had learned growing up. And it was, we gonna butt heads. And if we don't agree, then that is what it is. You go to your corner, I go to my corner, and that's how it's gonna be. So I definitely felt comfortable talking to our therapist the first time. It didn't feel like therapy. It just felt like a conversation.
Yeah.
And so we kind of started there, and it turned into a 3-4 year journey. And we're not doing it. I'm not doing it consistently now, but every few months or so, I have like a tune-up session, emotional tune-up, and it's been life-changing. Yeah, it's been life-changing for us.
It really has been.
And I think that's something that, honestly, that I'll say that was God, because I think I have a couple of my brothers, like good friends, who have had therapists, but they've had to go through multiple therapists to find someone that they actually feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And so I think I would have been very turned off to the idea of therapy if I had to go through multiple people. And like, I don't know, some people just be talking about the things that their therapists be saying and the approaches that they have. And I'm like, man, that just sounds off.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like my friends would give me better advice than that.
Yeah.
Like, that's really weird. And so I think if I would have had that experience and had to have gone through this dating process for therapists, then I probably would have wrote it off instantly. And we wouldn't be where we were at.
I agree. I think in this whole process too, I really appreciate your willingness to even learn from me, because I say that in our marriage, I'm always learning from Elijah. And I literally say this all the time to friends. You guys have heard this a million times. I swear I said it in the last podcast. Like, I'm always learning from you in so many different ways. But I appreciate that you've recognized a strength in me and that you've actually leaned my way in
definitely
learning from me. And I feel like that has been also, that's also a part of emotional intelligence. You know, like sometimes as a man, even though you're the leader and even though you're the one that, like, you know, God has entrusted this family with, let's be honest that sometimes you're not going to be perfect. You know, there's going to be areas where you're not going to be as strong, and maybe your wife will be stronger. You're still the leader and, you know, you still hold that role, but you've gleaned from a strength in me, you know?
100%.
So I want to also help, you know, maybe other men or even other women that maybe lack in this area, because what has helped so much is actually being really granular, you know, with you. For example, this is like a small example. Elijah is empathetic. You have a heart for me, but there
100%.
would be a lot of times in maybe conflict where I wouldn't feel the heart because you're so dead set on like what it is that you're trying to say. And sometimes like anger has a way of being a shield to someone and making them feel cold. So it would make me feel not as safe sometimes because I'd maybe be upset about something and I wouldn't feel his empathy.
Right.
So we had to get granular where I'm like, babe, this is what empathy looks like. Sometimes we want something from our partners or we want them to grow in an area, but we're not giving them the tools. So I recognize all these years I was demanding something of Elijah that I actually didn't really even help him to know how to navigate me better. I remember creating a note in my phone where I was like, okay, this is what empathy looks like. You took it in because you started to actually do those things that I wrote down. So a few of the things to share with you guys, like if you're dealing with a spouse that you feel like doesn't actually express empathy, one of the things that I put was, hey, if you see me that I'm upset, lean in, you know, ask me more questions. Why are you upset? What about this conversation made you upset? Why in this particular point in the conversation did you get upset? Yep. You know, like be curious. You know, that shows that you're not only in tune with my emotions, but you're leaning into my emotions and you want to learn more. Also, I would say, hey, repeat back to me. Repeat back to me what I said so I know for sure that you actually heard me and you took me in. Another thing I said was say something like, thank you for sharing. He's so good at this now. It's so funny because I always like internally chuckle when he does it because I'm like...
You externally chuckle too.
Do I externally chuckle?
Yeah, you do it out loud.
I think it's so funny because I'm like, dang, God, you really changed my husband, because now every time I share how I feel, like, babe, can I share something? I feel like this, da-da-da-da. And he'll be like, thank you for sharing. And it's just so funny because I love it so much and I appreciate it. So anyway, I'm saying all that to say, like, man, you can expect something of someone, but if you don't help them on the journey of giving them the tools they need to succeed in that area, then you guys always going to be fighting over the same thing, you know?
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting because it sounds like so elementary now. I'm like, as we talk about it, I'm like, man, of course, it's so obvious that you should do it. But I think when you're not in an environment where that is the norm, then you just do what you're taught.
Right.
And so my experience growing up as a young boy, playing sports mainly, having 3 brothers, you know, I didn't grow up with my sister. She grew up with her mom. We got different moms, same dad. And so my mom was the only woman in the house. And then it was me, my brother, sports teams that I was on. And so there just wasn't a lot of emotional conversations being had. And then I think the conversations that were had around emotions as a young boy growing up was you can have them, but be tough first. Always have a tough exterior or put the emotions to the side. Especially because like in most situations that I think about, sports, school, the importance of emotion wasn't given value. Like I literally was not shown the value of emotion. Because it's like in sports, you just got to be tough. You got to put your feelings aside. You got to push through. There's always adversity. There's always going to be pain. And it's just like push it to the side, right? I feel like schooling kind of was the same way. It's just like get the things done. Do the things. Like complete the objectives. And so, maybe it was just like an environment of performance. I think that built up a belief and just a belief that, all right, your emotions are there, but they're not useful. And it took a while to even get to a point of like, what's the importance? Because even I remember something we've had conversations about a couple of years back this was probably 5-6 years ago, was what's the value in deep friendships, right?
I remember that, yeah.
Like, that was a conversation for a while. And like, what was the value in my emotions? It's like, how does that benefit? You know, like, how does that benefit me? Or how does that benefit us? Or how does that benefit you? And so I think if you do not value something, then you're not spending the time learning about it,
right,
or caring about it, or molding it, whatever. And so, that was like a realization that I had to come to was, why is this thing valuable? It's valuable because, one, it is a kind of benchmark of where you're at. It can help point you in the right direction of the things maybe that you should keep doing, the things that need to be changed. And it gives you an opportunity to connect with other humans.
Right.
Like, when we can connect emotionally, like, that brings about these relationships and these connections that can last a lifetime. And I don't know, just like a shared experience.
That's so good. I agree. One of the things you said as you were explaining that this sounds obvious. Yeah. And I think I would honestly argue that maybe it's not as obvious as we think. Like, I remember listening to this guy and he was talking about how communication is something that we all do, but it's actually never something we're taught. Like, it has this type of energy around it where it's like, oh, well, we all talk, so we all know how to do it. And that's actually not true. Like, yes, it's innate that obviously we learn language and we learn how to talk from our parents, but we're not taught how to navigate certain conversations, conflict, things like that. So I wouldn't say it is obvious. I think like everything, there is a procedure and a method to it. But I just don't think that a lot of families do a good job at teaching their kids that. Because I even think about our son and our daughter, like, for example, Saith, she has a tantrum. She be going crazy. She's throwing stuff, she falls on the floor.
Yeah.
We have to teach her that's not how you handle your emotions, you know? Obviously, she's 2, so whatever. Like, not that
some days you win. Some days you just let it go.
Whatever. But if we think about it, a lot of adults still have temper tantrums. Yeah. They slam doors, they break plates, they punch walls. They're still acting out. And I think it's because nobody ever told them, hey, like, this is not how you do it. And here's a more correct way. Hey, you're feeling this way because of this emotion that's rising up in you. Let's talk about that. And I feel like especially in the Black community, honestly, I'm not saying all Black families, but a lot of Black families, that is honestly the norm. It's like you feel them and then you push them away and you feel these emotions. Okay, whatever. Like, what is talking deeply about something in a Black family sometimes? Yeah.
Right.
So
it depends on how you're raised. Because out of all the people that I've met, I will say I only have one male friend that I can think about. And this is like my best friend, one of my best friends. And he's the only one that I can really think about who grew up in an extremely emotionally healthy environment to where like there was always conversations surrounding the kid's emotional state. There was always conversations just around like life experiences even. Because I think about just simple conversations that we have with our kids now around school. If our son goes to summer camp, hey, how was your day today? Like, how are the interactions with the other kids at school? Even a couple weeks ago, Shiloh told me that, hey, I felt like I had an interaction with someone and felt like they were being a little bit mean. And so it's just like digging into those conversations and asking, okay, well, what was said that made you feel that way? How specifically, like, what were you feeling? I know, did you feel like he was trying to belittle you, or what specifically was it like? Let's put verbiage to that. There's only one friend that I can think of who was having conversations like that his whole childhood. Yeah. And most other people, it's just not happening, or it's happening amongst friend groups. Right. More so than family.
I agree, because I would say growing up, I was taught to downplay emotions. Like I would see like things happen that are worth talking about in our home.
Yeah.
And the general consensus was we just don't talk about it. So that taught me growing up that your emotions don't really matter, or like if you have them, push them to the side. And that's why I had a hard time years later, even though I grew a lot in emotional intelligence. That was something that I struggled with, was actually being able to pinpoint what those emotions were, because I learned for so long you can't even act on or talk about those emotions, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really grateful that we're breaking the cycle, you know, because the only way to really just break that cycle is through pouring into our kids and teaching them something different. And I love that I'm already seeing the signs of that in Shiloh. He's 6 years old. He can communicate to us. He can tell us how he feels. He can tell us why he's mad, why he's sad. And we encourage conversation.
Yeah.
Like he's allowed to ask us questions. He's allowed to say how he feels. And I know even in a lot of Black homes growing up, you're not even allowed to challenge the status quo. You're not allowed to ask questions.
We were talking about that this morning.
Yeah, you can't even say why. I remember sometimes when I was really, really young, I'd get in trouble for saying why. You can't even say why. Just do what I said, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just really glad that we're breaking the cycle.
Yeah, definitely. There has to be an openness. Something we were talking about earlier was how my mom will come into town and she'll listen to conversations that me and my son will have. And I feel like sometimes she's shocked by the things that he asks. And I feel like just her facial expressions and her energy is like, oh, you gonna let him talk to you that way? Like, you gonna let your son talk to you that way? And it's like, yeah, I'm okay with him questioning me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm okay with him saying, why are we making this decision?
Right.
Or why are we doing this? You know, because I value his input. And I think that's a good skill for him to have.
Me too.
Is to be able to communicate his opinion and his emotions. And even if we're not going to go with whatever it is that you're saying, like the fact that you have a voice, practice using your voice and use your voice to express how you feel is needed.
And it's not even disrespectful. It's not that he's disrespectful at all.
No, not at all.
It's just.
But that can come off disrespectful to previous generations.
Right.
Some other generations look at just basic questions as disrespect.
Right. And I want our kids to grow up challenging things sometimes.
Yeah.
I genuinely want that.
Everything.
Yeah, challenge everything, question everything. Like, not to be difficult or annoying, but so that it can actually make sense to you before you just go and do something blindly. Like, if an employer tells you to do something, I want you to question if it actually is off, because I don't want you doing something illegal.
Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this?
Or even if it's not something to that extreme of it, something illegal, it's just like, all right, y'all status quo is that at this job, we do this thing this way. Like there's a process and there's a procedure set in place. That's great. And also, let's question why we did this or why we're doing this, why it's set up this way. And then that way there's opportunities to advance and evolve. Like if you don't ever question the status quo, then you will always remain the same. You'll never change.
Right.
You know, so questions is what brings growth.
Absolutely. I love that so much.
Let's talk about how emotional intelligence can benefit you in your life. So I'm thinking like the big ways that emotional intelligence has benefited me is, of course, in our marriage, which we've kind of been talking about, is like you're able to handle conflict much better. And so this is not just in like marriage. This can be in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. I think this can improve your relationship with your kids, with your parents, with your friends as well. I think as I've become more emotionally aware, my friendships have become much deeper.
I love that.
And the benefits that you will receive and that you will be able to give someone else in a relationship are limited by your ability to be emotionally aware.
I love
and
that.
to communicate that.
I agree.
And so if you don't know how you feel, if you don't know what you need emotionally from someone else, or if you're scared to communicate those things, then you will not have a fulfilled relationship.
Yeah.
And this is friends included.
Yeah.
You know, if I haven't reached out to my friend in a couple weeks and he comes to me and he communicates to me, hey bro, love you, man. I just really feel like I'm going through a hard season right now. I would appreciate if you were a little bit more supportive in this season and you would just follow up with me more often. You'd reach out, or we talk once a week or something, or every couple of days. He's just like, man, it's really been hurtful that you haven't been present. You know, I'm going through this, that, and the third, and I just need you there to be supportive. You know, if he's able to communicate that, first off, he has to be able to pinpoint that. He has to be able to communicate that, and I have to be able to receive it and make changes based off of what he's saying. But if we're able to have those conversations, then we'll have a stronger bond, a stronger connection. And even something I think that's been on my heart recently and that God has been showing me, which there may be something to this, is men in this day and age, which I'm glad, I think there is a change in the culture. I think men are have desires to be more connected with each other in a healthy way. But I think there needs to be more spaces, more opportunities for men and brothers to have connections, have relationships, have friendships together in safe spaces. And I haven't seen personally necessarily a lot of spaces, like I said, a lot of opportunities for younger men to be able to connect with each other, to be able to talk about experiences that they're having, to be able to talk about the relationship things that they're going through, to be able to talk about the career challenges they're going through, to talk about like the personal struggles that they're going through. It's like, even if you're single, like, man, I'm going through this, that, and the third, and I don't have anybody to share it with. I don't have a space to share it. And so it's crazy because even at church, like in the last 3 weeks, I've had like 4 or 5 separate conversations with different guys, all essentially saying the same thing. Like, man, I'm okay, but I want more when it comes to relationships. I want to be able to communicate with like-minded brothers. Like, I want us to be able to gather and have lunch, have coffee, like have a little small group meetup, have something for men to where we can come together, we can connect, and we can literally just share and express. And I love it because it's counteracting the be tough, be a man, this toxic masculinity, I guess we can call it. This toxic masculinity stereotype that has been set up where, as a man, you are just supposed to be a provider, or you're just supposed to be this tough guy, or you're just supposed to keep going, be a hard worker. It's like, yes, and also, like, let's communicate how we feel, with our friends, and let's walk through life together with our friends. Something that has been super game changing, I think, in my life also is just like having consistent coffee dates. Like being able to have, me and one of my bros, we go and grab food or go and grab coffee at least once a month, and a lot of times it'll end up being more than that. But like, we have a set date on the calendar where it's like, we're going to go, we're going to connect, we're going to catch up. We're both super busy, but we value our relationship. We value being able to share what's going on in our marriages and in our relationship with our kids and our relationship with our wives. And so it's like, all right, we're just going to share what we're going through, and we're going to give each other advice. We're just going to be there. Sometimes it's not even about advice. Sometimes it's just about connection, and it's just about, just listening, being able to express.
I love that. I feel like what you're discussing essentially is that emotional intelligence just creates for depth of relationship.
Yeah.
And I love that because I've seen it in our marriage. I've seen it in my friendships. Mm-hmm. The deeper I'm able to go with somebody is honestly the safer I end up feeling, because I'm like, wow, I love knowing that I could actually go anywhere. I could share anything. Yeah. And this person will always be here. This person will love me. And they'll also talk with me through it in the middle, of however I'm feeling. Like, even with us, I feel like our ability to navigate conflict better has made our marriage so much sweeter and has made me feel safer with you. Now I feel like there's actually no space between us because I'm able to actually come to you. There's no hesitation. Yeah. Like before, early on in our marriage, there was a hesitation to approach you with things because I'd be afraid of how you would respond, Yeah. But now that fear is gone because you've navigated it so well, many conflicts, that I'm like, wow, I could actually go to him with anything, and there's just another level of safety, which makes me feel like I can actually truly be naked with you, not physically, not just
too.
Physically.
Hey, come on,
like, bro, we're so mature.
Turn this camera off. Turn them off.
Crazy. But Yeah, just like emotionally.
Right.
And as a woman, oh my gosh, that goes such a long way. Like as a woman, it goes such a long way. Like all he has to do is talk to me nice, okay?
And talk to me nice now, huh?
Talk to me nice. And like, you know, from that place, like so many other things open up. So I don't know. I just feel really, I'm just really grateful for the growth in that area. And also I'm really appreciative of the fact that you're willing to share this. Not a lot of men are willing to even open up about the fact that they actually sucked in that area, like, or do suck in that area, you know? Yeah. So I think that's awesome.
How do you heal your heart? And how do you start to open back up and give new people the opportunities to, like, honestly, it's weird because when you are in a relationship or in a friendship and you are being emotionally open, there's potential for a deeper connection to be built. And there's just as much potential for them to hurt you.
Yeah.
So how do people open up and heal?
That's such a good question. My best friend always says this thing that I love and it's so true. She always says, even if you're hurt in the context of community, the only way you can really heal is in the context of community. You need people to show you something different. Lord. And that can be very healing to your heart, because what can happen is if you live from that past experience of, oh, this person hurt me, or whenever I open up, you know, this is how people will respond, then you can truly really never heal, because that's going to be the belief that you hold to. And if you actually go into a relationship with someone new, or let's say that person grows and they show you something different, it can be really healing to your heart, because you're like, wait, not all situations end up that way. Like, I can actually do this in a safe way with safe people. So I think people are a very important part of the healing process. Like, yes, obviously we pray and we ask God to heal us and heal our hearts, but I also believe that he uses people as well to help be a part of that healing process, to show us something different. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Something that I'm thinking about too is our last episode touched on this, but just your beliefs. And so I think beliefs play a big part in whether you're willing to be open again, and whether you're willing to put yourself back out there. And I think if you believe that, like, that all people are going to hurt you, or that nobody can be trusted, or that there's no communities out there that are healthy, then it's like it will feed into your desire to stay closed off. Right. And then it's like, if you also believe, hey, like, maybe the situation that I was in where I was hurt, maybe it wasn't intentional, you know, maybe it was just like through two people not knowing what they were doing, right, I was hurt. Or maybe it was a realization that, hey, no, that was the wrong person to be with, right? You know, or like I just was in an environment growing up where people were not emotionally healthy, or people did not know how to handle conflict, or do this or that and the third. And it's like, now that I have that realization, I am aware that there are people out there who will hurt me. And I also believe that there are people out there who are healthy, who I can have community with, who I can have relationships with, that are extremely healthy and will add to my life. But so you just have to believe that that thing is possible for you. I agree.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good.
All right, last question I got for you is, how has emotional intelligence benefited you, let's say, in your career? I'm thinking when you were working corporate.
I mean, I guess I'd say, like, in corporate, it benefited me, because even if maybe somebody pissed me off that day, or, you know, I just felt like something wasn't handled well in the office, it really helped me to just know, like, hey, this is the workplace. Like, at the end of the day, I feel like emotional intelligence also helps you to realize where to put people and who belongs in what bucket, you know, because I can see people, because you see somebody every day and you see them a lot, you thinking that, oh, maybe this is like more of an acquaintance, this is a friend, you know. And
same with people you meet at school or something,
right?
When you're younger, it's like you assume because we see each other every single day for 8 hours a day, we're friends,
right?
And it's like, no, that's not. That's not an automatic thing, an automatic title you give to people.
Right. And I think that emotional intelligence is you actually being able to classify where people belong in your life.
Yeah, that's good.
Because if you put somebody in the wrong bucket, they can hurt you a lot deeper than they should have been able to.
Yeah.
You know, like, there should be walls and guards around work relationships. Honestly, I really think so. Because like, let me be honest. Like, yes, do I think you can make a friend with a coworker? Yes, you can. But
there's outer circles, there's inner circles.
Right.
Even Jesus had the 12 disciples, and then he had the three that he was closest to.
And I think just like really being able to put people in the right buckets is really important because it helps protect you. So I would say just like in the area of my career is just like knowing like, okay, when somebody's just a peer in terms of like a colleague and an acquaintance versus when somebody's actually a friend, and not giving people improper access.
Improper access. Come on, you better preach. Yo, that reminds me of, I think we read this book together, Emotional Intelligence by Darius Daniels.
Yeah.
That is one of the best books I've read on how to be emotionally intelligent. And that's something that he spends a lot of time on in his book is how to classify people.
Yeah.
You have your close friends, you have your associates. He uses the term assignment. Some people are supposed to be an assignment. And then like a mentor-mentee relationship as well. So he has these different categories, and it's just like knowing, hey, if this is someone I met at work or there's somebody I met at school,
right?
Like they can just be an associate. Like I don't have to make an intentional effort to build a relationship with them. It can just be, I see you when I see you and we cool.
Right.
Like that's what it is. It don't have to be anything deeper. Like I don't have to ask you for any big favors. We don't have to try to spend time together and being okay with that. And then there's people who you may connect with on a deeper level where you're like, no, you know what? I really like this person. I really feel like this is a mutually beneficial relationship and we should get to know each other more. And those will be, hopefully the people that become close friends, and you can test the waters. Somebody that's an associate, you can, go to lunch with them or something and see, hey, is this someone I actually want to spend more time with? And you might realize, oh, no, they got some stuff going on in their head. Right. They need to get fixed before I spend more time with them.
Not fixed.
But yeah, I love that you brought that up. That's really good.
Yeah, just knowing who to go deep with is so important, because that'll help protect you.
Cool. Well,
okay.
All right, that's all I got.
Yeah, this is really good, babe. I love this topic. Good job.
That's a great episode.
Yes, awesome.
All right, y'all. That was it for today. We will be back in another couple days with another episode. If y'all got any suggestions on topics that you want us to discuss,
let us know.
Even if you have a suggestion on someone you would want to see interviewed, we're going to start bringing some guest speakers, some guests into this pod, into Mornings with My Muse, and we're going to start interviewing some folks, some leaders in their spaces, some people who are excellent at what they do, world class. And so we want to hear from you below if there's anyone specific that you have in mind, and then we will see you in the next episode. Peace.
Bye, guys.